Hello everyone, I'm Captain Logan.
And I'm Eric.
And today we're going to tell you how we felt about Stephen King's It, our second Stephen King movie in like a month.
Is it Stephen King's It, or is
it's
it
not.
It?
I'm just saying that so that people know what I'm saying, because it is just a one-syllable singular word, and whenever I say it just sounds like it's not really the title of anything, you know? Because it's a pronoun. It's really kind of fun. The movie deals with the pronoun thing. Kind of like that. But anyway, so yeah, today we're tackling It, and Eric's right, it's not called Stephen King's It.
I believe the miniseries was, though.
Was it?
I think the miniseries is Stephen King's It.
I was kind of a little bit surprised that they didn't do that. And I wonder if, like with Dark Tower, if he was very closely involved with this, or if he had any, because I haven't looked into the production on this at all. I don't know if he had any, like veto power or anything.
Trailers were just like, remember when you were scared by Stephen King's It? Then you went back to it and it kind of sucks. Be scared by Stephen King's It again.
We're just trying to justify why it needs to be remade. It's
like that miniseries kind of sucks.
Yeah, it's not great. And like I get why people remember it, you know, because
it's really scary when you're a kid.
Yeah, and it's got some really vivid imagery. You know, like the way it handles the clown and stuff. You know, then looks fine.
And
it's
just great.
Yeah, it's just going back to it. It's a slog. It's slow. I haven't watched it in a long time, but I remember thinking it was pretty slow. And I didn't grow up with it, so when I watched it,
I also didn't grow up with it.
I was in high school, and I was like, I don't get what the fuss is about with this. So I feel like this was one of, if not the most remakeable Stephen King movies. Although I don't like to think about it like that. I mean, it's somewhat of a remake in that. There's stuff that miniseries did that it's clearly doing again, like the kind of creepy kid song thing. Like I think that was a miniseries thing that it's bringing back for the most part.
Some of that might be in the book.
Well, yeah, but like you can't put a melody in a book. I mean, it's a real specific sounding melody.
I see what you mean.
But I remember that from the miniseries. So in some ways it is a remake, but it's more of a new thing based on the same source material.
It's a readaptation before it's a remake.
Yeah, absolutely. So anyway, we're going to go ahead and tell you how we felt about it. This is a thing that people have seemed to be pretty excited about. Dark Tower people looked at and were like, that looks pretty generic.
Or
and
they didn't even know it was coming.
Yeah, and then it was pretty generic. Well, and I think the studio did a better job advertising this. I mean, this has been everywhere. Like, people knew about this. I don't know, would you say like most anticipated horror film of the year, or one of them?
Maybe.
Certainly one of them.
I don't think anyone was excited for Annabelle.
Yeah, yeah. I didn't even know about that until we.
You didn't know that was a franchise from The Conjuring. You didn't know that there was a shared horror movie universe.
No, we went to see another movie, and we wound up with accidentally tickets to that movie, and we had to go back and turn them back in and go see the movie we went to.
Yep.
You remember that was when we saw Baby Driver?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
But anyway, so we're going to tell you how we felt about it. Eric, go ahead and flip your board and tell us what you thought about this.
So
sir.
I have varied opinions, so coming up with a specific board was a little difficult to nail down exactly how I feel.
Did you wish we had like 3 boards for you?
A little bit, because I feel different ways about different things. So my board's negative, but my opinion isn't necessarily entirely negative.
Oh, okay. Right.
So my board is, this movie made me feel like I was being begged and pleaded with to be scared. I think the fatal flaw of this film, it is in no way scary ever. And in a lot of places, I think it's laughable. It is...
Really? Okay,
yeah.
All right.
I think the horror elements of this movie are incredibly paint by numbers. It's almost scientific in its precision, and I don't ever think it works. And CG kills a lot of that stuff.
Wow. Wow. Okay.
Yeah. No. I think as a horror movie, which is unfortunate because it's a horror movie, I think as a horror movie, this film fails completely. I don't ever... Except for once, which is the opening scene, when Pennywise is talking to the kid, they light his eyes a certain way, and it's a really uncomfortable scene, and it's really well done. Everything else, I don't think works at all. On the flip side, with the exception of a bully who should never be allowed on a film set again, this cast is amazing.
Yeah, yeah.
It is the best group of kids I have seen in a long time. They're all phenomenal. So it's a mixed bag, because it's a horror movie that I don't think is in any way effective as a horror film, but I really like the cast, and I think they all do a really good job, and there's points where I think there's maybe some things missing. I wouldn't be surprised if there's a slightly longer cut of this film.
Yeah.
But I think all the character stuff works and tracks for the most part, and I really like the kids and the characters, and so I don't know. Like, I think this is an enjoyable film. I think it's worth seeing, but not as a horror movie because I don't think any of that works. So I don't even know where I end up landing because I think it's worth seeing for the performances of the kids, and I think the story, the characters are pretty good. But if you're going in this to be scared, I don't think you're gonna be. I think this is probably a great, like, I'm 14, I've never seen an R-rated horror movie on my own kind of a movie.
Yeah.
I think it's perfect for that. But for me, I thought every single horror beat I was counting to, and it was always 3 or 4 beats. You do 3 beats for a jump scare, and you do 4 beats for when you're gonna do a jump scare, but you want them to think you're not gonna do a jump scare.
Yeah.
I thought there were so many like loud noises to alert me of a jump scare I should be having, and all of the imagery I thought was marred by the fact that their CGI looks bad. So I don't know, it's kind of a toss-up. I really like the kids. I really liked I like the character elements, but the horror elements didn't work for me. So I'm gonna go with feeling it because I thought it was an enjoyable film.
Yeah.
And worth seeing, but I don't think it works as a horror movie, which is a weird thing to... I'm really mixed, where I'm like, it doesn't work as a horror movie, but it's enjoyable to watch. So I don't know. How did you feel?
Well, some of that surprises
I want
me.
your board to say "scared my pants off."
I was about to leap into the ceiling. I'll just flip my board, and I guess I'll just say my piece, Eric.
Sure.
Because we had different experiences with this to a degree. Although I had some of what you're talking about with jump scares, but I have a different read on it.
Okay.
Or with just the horror elements. In fact, before I flip my board, I'll just say I'm with you on jump scares. I think the movie is scarier than you do, but you have to look at it in a particular light. It is my thing. I think you can't look at it as a 25-year-old or a 30-something-year-old who's seen a lot of horror films. You have to put yourself in the shoes of these kids.
Okay.
And I feel like it's character-driven enough that I'm able to do that. So when you say if you're a 14-year-old and you're seeing a horror film for the first time, it's probably fine for that. Well, that's close to the age these kids are, and if I put myself with them, then it's easier for me to be scared because I'm scared for them. You know what I mean? So I'm invested in that way. As far as jump scares and that kind of thing goes, it's too rhythmic. It's too easy to tell when things are going to happen, and there's this weird. It's an 80s horror movie made now, except the jump scare part of it, a lot of the horror beats are done like we do them now. So the movie is shot a lot like you would make a movie from that period, I think, and like it has that kind of flavor. But then Pennywise does this, and I don't like that.
No, the shimmying is hilarious.
That was
the fact that he shimmies at people and it's supposed to be scary is hilarious.
Whenever that happened, I wanted to add, because I think that guy gives a great performance, and I think he is actually legitimately frightening. Except whenever they put special effects on him.
I only thought he was scary when he talked at the beginning in the well.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
The rest of the movie, I was like, I don't know what you were doing in that first scene, but you're not doing it here.
See, I didn't. I was with it with him.
Okay.
I feel like by the end, once he, not to give too much away, but once he's not supposed to be as scary to them anymore, I feel like I'm tracking that. I feel like he's gone from scary to now he's. I mean, if you know it, you know the story, you know. But like this, I kept wanting to ask the movie to stop making trailers for its own movie and put because when they watch
the movie, it is cut like a trailer. I was like, am I watching a trailer for the movie I'm watching in the middle of the movie I'm watching?
It was I know what you're talking about now. Well, it wasn't a movie. It was a slide projection.
It was a slide projection.
Yeah. This movie made me feel pleasantly but sometimes unnervedly surprised. I threw in somewhat unnervedly. Actually, I just wrote but unnervedly. Sometimes. I'll put that amendment in there because I get why Eric's saying that he was there. What's weird is the parts where I was unnerved, unsettled, much of the time wasn't even the horror stuff. It was the bullying.
Yeah.
It was the kids being terrorized. The place in this movie I cringed the most. This will be a minor spoiler. You're gonna laugh at me. It was the rock throwing.
I thought that was awful.
I couldn't deal with that.
I thought that the rock throwing was awful. I thought it was really tonally unbalanced. I'm like, I get that you're doing a movie in the 80s and you think you're doing an 80s movie.
Oh no,
this doesn't work at all.
They sort of shot it like Snowball.
No, it didn't work at all.
It was just the idea of it, I guess. Not to make this too personal.
And did you see how big those rocks were?
Yeah,
they were huge.
Well, and like one kid gets hit with one, right, at the beginning of that scene, and it does what it ought to do, and then after that,
bleeding.
They don't seem to there aren't enough casualties in that scene. But when I was,
I don't think we ever see the bully's friend. Oh no, we do see the bully's friends again. Okay, they did make it.
When I was a kid, I had a friend that happened to, and it was traumatizing. And as soon as that even came up, I just
it was played so fun-loving. Like it was really tonally just off for the entire movie.
I think I don't want to go that far. I think again it's because it's from the perspective of our characters, where now they're standing up to them, and so it's like a good moment for them. But I'm with you in the sense that, I don't think it's completely tonally uneven, but it's a problem in the sense that, it should be more violent than it is, and it's a violent film. But anyway, so let me backtrack a little bit and say, I wasn't expecting anything from this movie, and I got a story, and I was excited about that. I got characters I could sink my teeth into. This is very Stephen King in the sense that it's story first and horror second. And I don't know that I've ever said that about a Stephen King movie outside of Misery. And it's not like I've seen every Stephen King movie, but this is definitely one of the better Stephen King movies I've seen.
Yeah, sure.
Personally, I wasn't as interested in and intrigued by the mythology as I was these kids and their plight, and it's heightened enough that I think it's getting away with the horror mixed with the comedy. There's a lot of levity in this movie.
There is a lot of levity,
and
I never. There's a couple of points where I thought maybe it was intrusive, but I always laughed.
Yeah. So then it's hard to decide.
Yeah.
Once or twice it is. There's a bit with this is a period piece, and by the way, I wasn't expecting that either. I
did know that going in.
I didn't know anything, and maybe I should have been able to tell that from the trailer, but I never paid that close of attention. I just remember the clown. That's all I remember. But this is set in '89.
It's a clown,
and yeah, it is. It is a clown. There's this. Go back and watch the Tick versus Proto Clown from first season animated Tick. They make a great It joke with the giant clown. It's a clown! But anyway, so this takes place in '89, and there's this bit in the heavier set kids' room about New Kids on the Block that I thought was going a little too far.
No, I agree.
There's a couple things like that.
Because it was like a dramatic exposition scene, and then it stops for a second.
And if they just showed the poster, it'd be okay, but they went too far with that. It was bizarre.
I agree.
I'm not looking at a cast list right now, but the girl in this is phenomenal.
She's phenomenal.
She's really, really good. I felt like she was totally sympathetic all the way through. I was always with her. I always felt for her. But I had that, I think, with everybody.
There's one kid. It's the Jewish kid. I kept losing track of him, and then he'd be in a scene, and I'm like, oh yeah, there is another friend.
Every now and again, they would have one kid off by himself, and I would have to remind myself which one it was, which is maybe a little bit of a problem. I think it's more about half of them than it is the other half, or even three.
The biggest problem...
It's kind of like the love triangle set, which, by the way, we could have gone way too far with that, and I was really excited that we didn't. I thought that was tasteful, and that was... it was believable, and again, just with what were you gonna say?
Well, I was gonna say the other kid that I think we lose kind of is the homeschool kid.
Yeah.
Just because he disappears for I feel like half the movie, and then he becomes friends with them.
He's established really early, and he's established 20 or 30 minutes before he mixes into the group, or maybe even longer.
I'd forgotten about him when he showed. They're like, it's the homeschool kid. I'm like, who's the homeschool kid? Oh, it's that kid.
Yeah.
I'd forgotten.
And the item that he brings to the party at the end, I thought that was all established really well. I thought that leading him up to being capable of doing what he does, I thought that was I think the setup and payoff is done pretty well in this movie.
Yeah.
I really so I like it mostly as a coming of age story. Certainly. I feel like the horror stuff and the bullying stuff is the horror stuff as a bullying metaphor, I think, is handled really well. It's obvious it's what this story is, it's what you expect. But
the bullies are insane people.
Yeah, the actual bullies. I mean, because you have two bullies, right?
Right.
You have the horror bully, you have the supernatural bully.
And that is a Stephen King thing. Stephen King was clearly bullied as a kid because his bullies are crazy people. But
yeah.
These ones.
You think maybe too authentic?
I don't know,
to source
because
material or to what Stephen King tends to do, because I've never read this book.
Possibly,
so.
or maybe an exaggeration of what Stephen King did.
Yeah.
But there's a point when they carve a letter into somebody, and then one of the bullies is like, hey man, maybe you shouldn't do that, and then he's just cool with it. And we do that again later with something else.
That's a really typical bully kind of thing, isn't it?
Yeah, where I'm like, no, there is a line to be crossed, and carving initials into someone, I think, is a line for most people.
And this is going to sound awful because I was almost sort of nostalgic for some of that stuff, because that was in a lot of the movies that we watched growing up, and bullying isn't what it used to be. We talk about that all the time, and I'm not saying that that's a bad thing, but you have to set this period really for a number of reasons. I mean, we talked about this in the car, but part of that, I think, is because like kids in modern day aren't running around outside as much, and they're being watched more like a hawk from their parents, and we have this kind of collective consciousness thing where as a society we don't like to let our kids stray too far, and in the late, going all the way up to really the early 90s, I think, but especially in this period, I mean, like Paper Girls is all about this, and the comics, and that's set in this period, 88, 89, and we just kind of let our kids, I mean, I remember this, like I was 5, but I was running around the neighborhood. You know,
I was running around the neighborhood
in
too.
that year.
I mean, not in 89.
But
when I was a kid,
right.
My friends and I ran around there.
But that was just that wasn't as prevalent, and where there's more stuff vying for your attention, so you're spending more time inside, you're playing video games, and you're watching TV. But also, we're starting to get, as a society, a little bit more cautious of our children being by themselves too much, and so there's a weird nostalgia thing. But then, of course, it's also about negligence, right? You know, I mean, I don't think Stephen King or the filmmaker are saying that like parents shouldn't let their kids be independent and figure things out on their own, but they are maybe saying when your kid is horrified out of his mind, you should maybe listen to what he's saying. You know, not that they really try to explain any of this to the parents, but everybody is totally oblivious to all the horrible things that are happening. And one big question that you got to ask yourself when you watch something like this is, just because it's a small town, do you really buy that that everyone, just for their own peace of mind, are ignoring all the horrible things that have happened every 27 years going back?
Well, and it's so weird because, like, over the course of this movie, at least 4 kids go missing. Because we keep seeing the missing posters.
You think people would just be moving, you know? They wouldn't want to live there anymore.
You'd think there would be, like, someone would have noticed. Like, he says that, like, the murder rate or something, or the missing rate or something is, like, 6 times out of any other town or something. You'd think adults would be.
But he had to do research to find that out.
That's true. Yeah. That's true.
But that's how oblivious the adults are. And we don't really get into the adults. What's interesting is the kids are all real 3-dimensional, human people with faults and with accolades, and the adults are cartoon characters. All of them. Like, you know, the kid's mom that's overprotective, the girl's dad who abuses and molests her. There's another one, I think, like.
I don't remember.
I forget. Oh yeah. The bully's dad. I mean, he's also a cartoon character. He's a cartoon character. But I think there's something satirical there before I'm making a complaint. And that's what I was going to say earlier. Is it's a real heightened kind of thing, and so I think it's able to get away with some of that stuff. But I think it's more sophisticated than your standard modern horror film, where it's horror, so it's also comedy. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think the horror element of it is actually comedic, and where it's falling flat for you, I think that ends up being a problem, where like it actually doesn't mean to be funny. But I think there's like a lot of comedy in this because it's an absurd enough world where these things can happen. I think that's the distinction, right?
Well, and a lot of the intentional comedy of this film is character driven. It's coming from people being nervous and just kind of saying things.
The vulgar kid with glasses is hilarious.
He's great.
He's
so good.
He's very funny. And I was kind of impressed that I was laughing so much at some of that stuff, because I usually don't like a lot of crude humor and stuff, but it was because of the source and the delivery.
Yeah, he had great delivery.
And you can tell that, like, again, he's a real person. So someday he's not going to be like that. He's going to grow up, and he's not going to overcompensate for his size and his nervousness by guy, talking about like banging everybody's mom and stuff like that, right?
You know what's the biggest praise I can give to this movie in a certain regard? This is the best movie I've seen this year using swearing.
Oh yeah, sure.
This is the perfect amount of swearing where it feels
really
completely natural and realistic.
Yeah, I was never like, oh, that's too many F-bombs, or like it all fit and made sense, because you have immature children.
Yeah, it worked completely.
That are in a situation where they're trying not to lose their minds. I'm not going to agree with you with some of the production value stuff you're talking about. I didn't have any issues with CG. I'm actually
CG looked really bad.
Really surprised you're saying that, and I will go this far, and maybe I was just kind of sucked into the story. I actually really liked this movie. I think I will go this far. There were places where I wasn't even thinking that this must be a visual effect, and even places where maybe I wasn't sure. And I'm kind of surprised that you're saying that.
Interesting.
Like without giving too much away, can you give me an example of a specific bit of CG that you thought was awful?
Anytime he uses his mouth.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
I thought all that was okay.
No, I thought that all looked really bad.
Interesting. Okay. All right.
Anytime you see anyone...
And I'm usually the first person, you know what I mean? I have been accused of being a prude about integration of CG. Nothing jumped out at me with this.
All of the couple of characters that we see that have like monster faces or like messed up faces, those all looked really bad CG to me.
I mean, I can tell it's a visual effect, but I didn't think it was badly.
But that's a problem for me. Because I'm supposed to be scared of it.
With me and a lot of other things, but
I'm supposed to be scared of it, and the second I'm aware it's not real, it takes me immediately out of it.
And this thing, I'm not, as you know, I'm not really a horror guy, and I don't even know what horror is for anymore. My thing is, I think I've been desensitized enough to things that I don't even know if I'm supposed to be scared, or if these things are just supposed to be scaring these characters. Now, the fact that, of course, it's trying to manipulate you, where like it's building suspense and it sits for a long period of time, and then there's something is loud happens or jumps out at you or whatever. That's obviously more for us than it is the characters in it, and so I guess that's a problem. But it's also just how these movies are so often made. Like I don't even think about it some of the time, except for movies, and this is more of them than not, where it's all about that and it's not actually about the characters we're following. You know what I mean? And because there are real protagonists in this movie, I wasn't even thinking about that stuff as much.
I was thinking about it every time. Like, it was almost like I was watching two movies.
Sure.
Anytime we cut to the horror stuff, I was like, well, this looks bad, and it's done poorly, and I know exactly what's going to happen. And then we get to the character stuff, and I like that. It was like a yo-yo thing, where I was like, I'm really enjoying this movie, less so. I'm really enjoying this movie, less so.
Yeah, it's weird. Because what you're describing almost sounds like going between sophisticated filmmaking and, like, bad network television, you know? Despite some of those like scary scenes lingering like that, I felt like the pacing of this movie was really interesting and really well handled, because
it felt more novel.
It felt longer than it is, and not in a bad way. I could not begin to tell you how long I sat in the theater. And when we got toward the end, I felt like I had been sitting through a miniseries before I was watching all a condensed movie, and I was kind of impressed with that. I also think there's some pretty darn good cinematography. Like it's a really competently shot film, I think. Despite issues you might have had with the CG, do you agree with that?
It's shot well. I just don't think any of the
set
horror
building
works.
is really good.
The set building is really good. And I think they do a good job with the period stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they're not too in your face about that, because you've seen those movies where they throw like a million Star Wars things at you in the back.
Yeah. Hey, don't you remember? It's the '80s. I think there was one where I was like, I get it, it's the '80s, but I can't even remember what that was.
But you have to have some of that because pop culture informs our world, just the culture in general. You're going to have some of that. Like, it's set in '89. There's a marquee with Batman on it. Yeah, sure, it's '89.
You know what it was? It was really early in the film when we first get to the kids and they're walking down the hall, and one of the kids goes like, it's like, where's the beef? And I'm like, is this the movie we're watching? And that never comes up like that again. And I was like, okay, that's fine.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, it's got to really walk a line between being that, 80s Goonies thing and being a horror film for adults, you know?
Yeah, and you said you wanted to say something about it being for kids or not?
Yeah, so I think the point of a thing like this, being especially being set when it is, and obviously some of that is because of the material and what you might do with the rest of it, which we shouldn't talk about, I guess. But,
sure.
But I mean, because you informed me that there's another part to, because I haven't seen the miniseries in so long. There's another part to it where they're adults, and that's not in this movie. So if you
so if you've seen the miniseries or you've read the book, it intercuts between these characters as adults and these characters as kids. This movie is just the kid stuff.
So if you were to ever do that, you'd have to jump 27 years ahead, I assume, because that's when Pennywise shows up. So if you either have to, if you did more of this, you either would have to jump into our future if you set the kid stuff now, or you have to set it some 20 odd years ago, right? So that's obviously part of why you have to do that. But what intentionally or not, it ends up functioning as a is kind of a trippy nostalgia piece to remind us what it was like being kids and the kind of scary side of that. And I think it does a really good job of that. Like, I felt like this was for my generation before it was for anybody else, and I kind of liked that about it. Well, but I feel like if the thing I wanted to say about kids, though, is that I feel like the character stuff is so good that, like, dealing with bullies, dealing with puberty, dealing with parents who don't understand you, dealing with your first relationships, all of the dealing with, like, feelings you can't describe, all of the coming of age stuff is handled really well. And so I feel like a 12 to 14-year-old who watched this movie would get a lot out of it. I think it would resonate with them, even though this isn't what their school would look like. This is this isn't exactly what those relationships are, but there are things that transcend.
Yeah, it's the feelings.
Yeah, there's just stuff in your adolescence that kind of transcends time period. But I don't know that it's appropriate for that age group. You know what I mean? And so there are you almost want to show it to kids. Not to little kids, but you know what I mean.
And if you like this, I would actually recommend you check out Stranger Things. Which is that Netflix show everybody talks about.
Right.
Because it's this.
Is it, really?
It's a bunch of kids in the 80s dealing with, like, scary stuff. And I've got my issues with that show, but, I mean, it's made well. It's written well.
Yeah.
It's very much like this.
Did you feel... Because you said your issue with that show is that we have those kinds of things. Why go back and make exactly what we had before? Do you feel like this movie has that?
No. Not really, because, like, This isn't a new property. You're adapting something.
Yeah.
Now I know I understand that you're moving the time period from the 60s to the 80s, but it's always going to be in the past. And if you're going to make the adult stuff in the present, you have to set it 27 years ago, which would be the 80s. So no, I don't have a problem with it because it's already an idea, and it's also not my biggest issue with Stranger Things. Is I'm like, yeah, but I saw E.T. and I saw Close Encounters and I saw all of these movies you're riffing on. In the 80s, I don't know why you're doing it in the 80s.
I mean, I think
I don't have that because it's it. I know what it is. It's its own thing.
Yeah, my biggest criticism with this is, in so many ways, this is the movie, besides CG and stuff, this is the movie you could have made then, that, like, we never got. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. We got that not-so-great miniseries. This could have been maybe the classic It film, and I think it's that good. The problem is the horror side of it is made too much like you'd make it now. And I don't mean that the whole thing should have been a throwback, but it's made in a fad kind of way. It's made the way we make horror films now. That whole thing.
And that's how we sold the movie, which was why I really didn't want to see this movie.
Yeah, we did tell it that way. You make it a more timeless thing.
It looks like a generic movie, and I think everything I felt about this movie based on the trailers, I think is totally accurate to the horror stuff. It looks like it's a generic horror movie. It's the other stuff that we didn't sell it on that is really good. Yeah,
you almost wish that that they sold it that way because they might have gotten some people to see it that wouldn't have otherwise gone. Like the scary aspects of it are almost secondary. I mean, they're not. It's about that. But you know what I mean? Like it's about fear, obviously. Okay. I said that was my biggest critique. The other thing is, there's a big sappy thing we do in the third act that I didn't like at all.
Interesting.
And I can't really say what it is here, but there's a thing with the girl that's really sappy, and I didn't like it.
Yeah.
And there's also a line the clown has at the end that I don't know why he says that, and that was problematic for me as well.
Is it the one reiterating the theme of Batman Begins?
Yeah. Yes. But otherwise, I think I like this better. I really liked this movie.
No,
I will
certainly like it more than me.
I will probably
liked
see
it.
it again. Yeah.
So two real quick things.
Yeah.
First one is one thing I really appreciate about this movie is the main character has a stutter, and it doesn't come from his brother being taken. He just naturally has a stutter.
Before that.
Yeah, I really like that. That's a really good choice, and it's done well. Like if I had a stutter when I was younger, and it feels natural. The way he delivers it, like it's not. Most of the time when we give a character a stutter, it's a joke.
Yeah.
It never feels like a joke. It feels like he's struggling to get words out of his mouth, and
it also doesn't.
I thought it was acted really well.
It also, at the same time, even though there's not an impetus for it, it also doesn't feel like a D20 role. It doesn't feel like that thing where, well, we got to give everybody some kind of character.
Yeah,
you know, like we do with Power Rangers. It didn't feel like that. He just and weirdly, this handled some of that adolescent Power Ranger stuff better than Power Rangers did. I was thinking that a little bit while I was.
So my second thing is we had a conversation on the way to the film, and you said there's. I can't imagine there's any way this movie makes me want to see what's in that book. Did this movie make you want to see what's in the book?
Only to know how much of it is what came from from the novel. Because it was handled so well, I don't really feel the need to like revisit it in prose necessarily. It's like a super long book, and it's not immediately a premise that I felt like I would want to read about for 1,000 pages.
Mm-hmm. I didn't know, given how much you liked the movie, if your position on that might have changed.
Slightly. I'll probably thumb through it and see what the prose is like.
Sure.
But
I was just curious.
Yeah, no, thanks. But anyway, everybody, thanks as always for watching. If you saw this movie, leave your comments and tell us what you thought. And in the meantime, I am Captain Logan.
And I'm Eric.
See you, folks.
Do